Hello, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to this live Employers Masterclass session from the Change in Education Group. My name is Ahmed, your host and careers advisor here at the Change in Education Group. Joining me today is Sabrina Ahmed from Introvert. Sabrina is a change coach, trainer, and founder of Introvert, a boutique coaching and training business helping introverted professionals unlock their barriers to change so they can create what they want using the latest practices of neuroscience, psychology, and creativity to deliver real results. How good does that sound? Sabrina, thank you for joining us on this live employer masterclass session from the Change in Education Group. So how is your day so far? How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. It's been quite hectic. So looking forward to a slightly different change of pace and catching up with you.
Fantastic. So Open Introvert sounds really interesting. You're coaching people, helping people. Tell us a little bit about Open Introvert and also about yourself and how the whole business came to form.
Sure. So it's a relatively new business, which I started kind of earlier this year because I'm a co-founder for another coaching and training business. And I realized that a lot of my coaching clients were actually kind of more on the introverted side. So, tend to be a bit more reserved, maybe less spontaneous, just less into kind of full on social kind of impact and engagement. And I'd say I'm probably kind of in that bucket as well. So I really, found that there was a gap in terms of working with people, particularly in the fintech industry, which is where my background is. And to be able to create something that's a bit more tailored to them and their needs. So that was really how I came about with the concept of it. Very much kind of built upon my own experiences in industry over the past 20 years. And also just trying to bring in the neuroscience and the psychology of it and, realizing that we are all different, but that doesn't need to constrain us when we want to, create the life we want and change what might not be working for us.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting. As bad as the pandemic has been, I think this is a golden time for introverts where they can express themselves a bit more. Would you agree?
I think it depends on their home life during the pandemic. So, for me, where, I don't have to homeschool children and I'm not having to deal with lots of, other probably people and activities in my home life, it has been quite nice, to be honest. I quite like my own company. I get, fully into topics and like to, have a bit of peace and quiet. But I know some of my introverted clients and friends have struggled where they've ended up having to do homeschooling on top of doing the day job, and maybe dealing with other family members that have ended up in the same place. So I think it really has been mixed depending on the situation people have ended up in. But I think by and large, most of us have enjoyed not having to commute and go into a really busy open plan office where you end up sitting there with your headphones in to block everyone else out.
So tell me, what is the biggest issue that your clients face and how do you deal with those issues?
I think the biggest issue that I find with coaching clients is generally our, beliefs, attitudes, and, our everyday thoughts. So collectively, people are talking about mindset, as how to describe that. But it really is kind of one of the biggest blockers, I would say, because we're never really taught from a young age that actually your thoughts aren't reality. They're just thoughts. They come in and out and they're based on experiences and whatever, but that you can actually question them and you can challenge them. And I think, when I first start a coaching engagement and have that conversation with a client, that's almost the biggest kind of eye-opener for them, because they realize actually, all these stories I've been telling myself that are getting in my way, I don't actually have to believe them anymore. So that I would say is probably the biggest kind of blocker that I see, but also the biggest kind of opportunity for people to make real change happen. Because, you know, with a bit of practice and just learning some of the patterns around your thinking, you can actually regulate yourself more and take more control over how you want to kind of react to things in the world and what you want to create in the world as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you've made there, you know, seeing what it is that you want to create and how you regulate yourself. Would you say most introverts are very creative people?
I think possibly. If we look at it from, you know, there are lots of different kind of personality models out there. The one I quite like, because a lot of the kind of you know, neuroscience and psychology evidence is, you know, supports it, is called the Big Five. So there are kind of 5 key personality dimensions. So introversion, extroversion is one of them, and openness and intellect is another one. And that tends to be more connected to people's creativity, their curiosity, how open they are to new experiences. So if you happen to be quite high in that dimension and you're an introvert, then, you know, you'll be a very kind of creative introvert. But it doesn't mean that, you know, you can't also be a bit more extroverted and be kind of quite creative as well. And there are lots of different ways you can cultivate that, you know, in terms of like just exposing yourself to much more information, different types of information. So, you know, read more, watch more, think about things more, go out into nature. So it's just, what I think is quite interesting is, you know, actually starting to break down people's experience so that they have a little bit more understanding of where they can focus so they can, you know, drive the change that they want.
Yeah, drive the change that I want. I like that. Can you be an extroverted introvert? And can you be an introverted extrovert?
So if you think of introversion, extroversion as a spectrum, so you naturally tend to be at, you know, kind of at different points on that spectrum, and there can be kind of genetic factors and then social factors, but you tend to kind of sit somewhere along that spectrum. And people that are not quite one or the other are called ambiverts. So they're, you know, they're kind of happy on their own, but they also quite like, you know, social interaction. And introversion, extroversion is really around, you know, how much effort it is and how much energy you put into kind of being sociable and, you know, your assertiveness, and, you know, how much energy you get and the positive emotions you get from kind of other people. So you can have behaviors where you end up being more towards one spectrum or the other, if you need to. So for example, you know, me doing this interview with you, I'm not super comfortable because, you know, I'm kind of in the spotlight, you know, I find social attention quite challenging, but because, you know, I think it's a good cause and I want to share my story and try and help people, I'm able to put behaviors in place that allows me to be a bit more extroverted and get over my discomfort. So, and it's the same for extroverts. If they're finding actually they're just out there too much and they're getting too much stimulation and being a bit too assertive, they can also realize actually I need a bit of downtime and need to kind of have some time to myself so that I can recharge. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, would that be burnout?
Burnout's slightly different, but yeah, you can get kind of, it's definitely around like energy levels as well. So you can get really exhausted if you're doing too much of the thing that isn't naturally what you prefer.
And how do you regulate yourself to keep that nice equilibrium, that good balance?
This is a really good question because I think, you know, the more I read the research and things like that, you know, it is about self-regulation. And actually, the first step is noticing your experience. You know, I talk about having a 6-step roadmap. And the first step is that being the observer, right? What is actually happening in your experience? Where are your drains and where are your radiators? I call them, you know, like where is your energy drained? Is it around certain activities, certain people? How does that make you feel? What do you get? What are you getting back? Or what are you giving to others? And then, actually reflecting on that and getting the insights from it. What are you learning from that process that you can put into, the next time you come across that situation. I think we're so used to being on autopilot and doing all the things and, kind of having obligations to other people. We sometimes forget to actually step back and think about, okay, well, how do I actually feel about this? And is this what I want to be doing? And how am I experiencing the world? And I think that's why mindfulness and things like that have got so popular, because we're realizing we don't actually know what our experience is. We're just existing. So I would say the first step to kind of improving your self-regulation is actually notice your experience, like observe it, act like a curious scientist and take in what's going on, what's working for you, and what you want to kind of do something differently about.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that you've touched on there, and I think sometimes you might feel that it's a maze and you're trying to narrow everything down so that it makes sense and to go with a plan, I suppose.
Yeah.
Would you say having a goal helps you to keep your focus, to help you to know where you're going? Is that something that you teach your clients?
Absolutely. And coaching, there's a lot of kind of, what is coaching? Essentially, it's a collaborative process with another person or a group, to kind of think about the outcomes and goals you want to achieve and helping you get there, at a very high level. So if you need to know where you want to go. And it sounds really obvious, but actually, how many things are we doing again on autopilot because everyone else is doing it? We're not really thinking about where we want to go and the type of life we want. And I think, when I was younger, I did the same thing, right? It's like, well, everyone else is joining this company and everyone else is doing this degree and everyone else is doing this. What do I actually want in my life? And it's really difficult to, step away from all the other influences, and give yourself the opportunity to think about, okay, what kind of person do I want to be? What are the goals that I want to achieve? And then be able to break that down into something a bit more manageable. So that's definitely a key part of, coaching. It's also not about getting obsessed with goals, because sometimes, you can get a bit overwhelmed and disappointed, but it's about, okay, what's the long-term kind of vision? And that's the next stage in my kind of process. Like, once you've worked out where you are, okay, what's your ideal life? Where do you want to actually get to? What kind of person do you want to be? And then let's kind of work our way back and close that gap.
And what sorts of methods do you use? Do you look at things in terms of, say, quarterly terms? Do you review each quarter? Do you review each year or 6 monthly? How do you go about doing that?
It really depends on the kind of outcome you want. So what I really like is, helping people understand their values. So, again, a lot of people don't realize, what do they really believe in? What makes them tick? What makes them kind of come alive? Because I think that will really drive, how frequently and when you need to set your goals for. So, for me, it might be, actually, I want to be more creative. So, my long-term goal might be I want to, within, 6 months, I want to be able to get into, painting, one painting per month or something like that. So it really depends on the type of, outcome you're looking for and the time period that you're looking for it. I think it's useful having kind of 3 monthly targets in terms of, very high level benchmarks. And then actually bringing that down to reality. It's like, a daily reflection. So how am I doing and being the person I need to be to achieve, what I want to get to in 3 months? So I think it's about having that overall kind of goal and aim or outcome. It could be, 3 months, it could be 2 years. But then how are you actually going to, keep track of that and achieve that, and know what to tweak, on a daily and weekly basis?
Yeah, definitely. When you're talking to your clients, and of course, time is an essential part of what you talk about. When you're reviewing things and you look at time in the grand scheme, what does time mean to you? Maybe time on this planet, or the time that we have with loved ones and families and so on. What does that mean to you when you think about that concept of time?
It's a really good question. It's quite a deep question as well, isn't it? I think. I think it really depends on where people are in their lives. You know, like the conversation I have with someone in their 20s might be slightly different to someone in their 40s and 50s, because they do have a very different perspective of time and, you know, where they want to put their time and the, you know, the legacy they want to leave behind. So I think it is very much about, you know, a really good question. I think if people are getting challenged about, you know, meaning and purpose and where they're putting their energies is, you know, think about, you know, the end of your life. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be remembered for? You know, and that's a really good way of taking yourself out of the day-to-day stuff and realize, actually, there's these three things that I want to be known for and be remembered for. So everything else that isn't helping me get towards that is probably not kind of, you know, stuff I need to be worrying about. So I think, you know, it really depends on kind of where people are in their life stage, and, you know, whether leaving a legacy is really important to them. I don't, you know, again, it's very individual. Some people have a really strong sense of leaving a legacy and their life having a certain meaning, whereas other people are, you know, have a slightly different perspective. They're like, well, as long as I've been a good person and been kind to people, that's my legacy. So again, I think it's a very individual thing.
Yeah. And reverse engineering is one method of going about it. And I think it's a method that can work for anyone thinking about going to college, university, thinking with the end in sight and then working your way back.
Exactly.
That's something that you use as well, that reverse method.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it can be quite intimidating, I know, when you're that age, because time doesn't really have much meaning, you know, because you're so used to, okay, I do school and then I do GCSEs for a couple of years and I do A-levels for a couple of years and then maybe I go into a job or a degree, and it's very bitty. So, you know, it can be quite difficult to kind of get a proper concept of time and your life. But I would really think about, you know, keeping it simple. You know, so, you know, if you don't want to think about like 80 years into the future, which can be quite intimidating, you know, break it down to what does feel manageable. You know, is it just 3 months or is it 2 years? You know, and think about not just what you want to have achieved, but the type of person you want to be, because a lot of that kind of identity based, you know, habit creation and, you know, goal creation is really powerful. So, you know, if you think about like, what kind of person do I want to be in X time, then that will really help you focus on the types of things that you should be spending your time doing.
Yeah, great advice. What do you think is the most important, setting the goals, writing the goals, or taking action on the goals?
Taking action is definitely the most important thing, because we can have all these grand plans and all these wonderful visions, but if you don't actually do anything with them, you're not actually shifting your life or making a change. And that's what I find, you know, I kind of put this out to my, you know, my audience, I think last week in a poll, just said, you know, if you get a magic wand and the thing that's getting in your way, you could suddenly make disappear, you know, what would success look like, and what is the thing that gets in your way? And it was 50-50 between, like, you know, the mindset and the emotion thing, which I thought was interesting because I'd put behavior in there as well, and no one really talked about the behavior bit. So I think people get very caught up in what's blocking them, but a lot of the way the brain works and the way we get momentum is by doing. So like confidence is a good example, right? So confidence comes from evidence. So people wait to feel confident before they do something, but actually you only really develop confidence by doing something and getting the information and the evidence and the feedback from it. So a lot of the things that we think are what we need are actually the wrong way around. And that's one of the quirks of the brain. It's great for everything that we're doing, but we're very good at tricking ourselves. So we think that we need all these things when actually we don't. And the best way to change your perception and change your progress is to actually do the stuff that, you know, you probably should be doing, because that then changes the evidence that you're getting and the way you predict. So yeah, it's a bit of a counterintuitive one, but
and sometimes I think they argue that don't let the good get in the way of what's right.
Exactly.
So what's good might be good, but is it right, and is it taking you off course in terms of what you need to do?
Exactly. And I think that works for perfectionistic beliefs as well. You know, I had a boss that used to say perfection is the enemy of good, because we get so stuck in everything having to be perfect or having to be a certain way. It's actually stopping you from getting the thing done, right? And then it builds up and it builds up. And, you know, I suffer from this. A lot of people in the fintech industry, very high achievers, very driven, and they get stuck with this all the time. So it's something that is quite challenging, but you know, it's actually about like lower your benchmarks, and done is better than perfect.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Done is better than perfect. Evidence produces confidence. The fantastic words of wisdom there. What do you enjoy the most about what you do?
I just love helping people have those aha moments, I guess. You know, like when, you know, I had a coachee recently who had this really long narrative, you know, ever since she was a child about, you know, how she worked, how the world worked, all of that. And with just some of the questioning and the investigation we did, she just suddenly had like the penny just dropped for her, and she thought, this just isn't helping me at all, you know? And it's like, I know. That's why we're having the conversation, because she got so used to thinking in this autopilot way and realized that what might have worked for her 15 years ago that she'd held on to was getting in her way. So that just helping someone see that and have that shift is massively kind of satisfying, I'd say.
Definitely, you know, when someone gets that epiphany, I don't think there's anything any better than that.
No.
But I like what the point you've made there as well, is to always review where we are as well, and then see what's working. What might have worked last year might not work this year, and be open to change as well and take action. Definitely. So a lot of our audience here are watching and thinking, you know, what advice would you offer me? I'm planning for university, I'm getting ready for college. What would you say to our audience, our students?
Gosh, I'm trying to think back to 20 something years ago when I was going through that process. I think, again, like with everything, keep it really simple. You know, maybe think of like the 1 to 3 things that you want to get out of, you know, your first 6 months, you know, and just be very focused on that. You know, there's so much pressure, I think, on students, and especially through the pandemic, you know, having to be all the things and keep doing everything, but really keep it simple to, you know, 3 things that you have control over. And, you know, I would say like prioritize your physical health, because, you know, if you sleep well and you're eating well, you know, your mind and your body are going to work better. You know, before you even get to doing any of the complex stuff, like make sure you're physically well and do exercise. And then I think the other thing is, you know, make sure you get a really good social group of people around you, because that massively impacts how you feel and how you navigate university. So I think if I had to really hone it into like advice or guidance, I would say, you know, look after your kind of physical health and your social health, because that, you know, both those together kind of improve your mental health.
Definitely. Being active, getting the blood flowing, the heart pumping, getting oxygen into your lungs, getting your body in the excellent condition,
Exactly.
And then for all that you need to do throughout the day. Definitely best advice I think I've heard, you know, for a long time. It's always good to hear that. So I just want to say a huge thank you for spending this time with us. It's always great just hearing your views and the advice that you've offered for our students today. I think some excellent things have been said, and I always say to our audience, when someone like yourself, Sabrina, comes in and offers pearls of wisdom, some great advice, I think it's only right and fair that we watch this at least a couple of times just to take in all that's been said, because there's just been so many jewels, so many good things that you said today, and I think it's worth reflecting on and going back and watching again and again. So just want to say a huge thank you for spending the afternoon with us.
No worries, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a wonderful conversation, actually. I love kind of talking to people about this topic. I'm very passionate, and yeah, I think good luck to everyone that's watching. It's an exciting time, whatever you do. So don't be too hard on yourselves.
Well, guys, there you have it. You've heard from Sabrina Ahmed, some incredible words of wisdom. She's shared her experience and knowledge here with us today. As I was saying to you earlier on this morning's live session, once you've watched these videos, these are excellent advice that's been shared with you. Reflect, think on these things that have been said, and we'd love to know what your thoughts are. You can get in touch with us via the email workexperience@changeineducation.co.uk. Connect with us on LinkedIn for those of you who are old enough. But again, just a huge thank you to Sabrina for sharing absolute pearls of wisdom this afternoon. So from Sabrina, from the Change in Education Group, and from myself, thank you very much indeed. Take care. Bye-bye.